Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be diving into Cyberpunk 2077. I wanted to see if Cyberpunk 2077 is a good game, and what state it's in now after CD Projekt Red has had time to patch out all the bugs and fix some of the problems the game originally had. So starting out, I've never played the game before, and I'm a little late with this game. It came out, what? 2 years ago now? Wow. This video will be by far the most ambitious project I've ever worked on for this YouTube channel now, and there'll be a lot of spoilers ahead. I'm gonna go over the whole story. If you're new to the channel or returning, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Any support goes a long way. I hope you enjoy. Let's get started. I thought about what difficulty I wanted to play on. High difficulty in games like these ends up usually making the enemies like bullet sponges really badly, and I don't want to deal with that. I decided to choose hard, a decision I'd start to regret as the game went on. For a starting background after reading the descriptions, Nomad sounded like the coolest background to me, but Street Kid made more sense to me for the character. In Night City, it just feels right. I'm not that interested in customizing my character's face. In a first-person game, you don't see it anyway, so we'll just roll with this one. Oh, I also gave my character an average-sized, thang to keep his ego in check a little bit. Turns out he's a grower, not a shower, ladies. For stats, I just went really average. I have no clue how this game's builds work or any of that, so we'll just roll with this. The game begins with me sitting at a bar talking to a man named Pepe. He wants me to straighten out some business between him and Kirk. He said there's some money that he owes him, and asked me if I'd straighten it out for him. So that's what I'm gonna do. My first impressions so far, the game honestly looks really great. All the characters moving around, having conversations, and it feels like a real bar. I hope the game's world outside of the bar gives me the same impressions. Whoa, hey there, big fella. As it turns out, Kirk wants me to steal a car for him to clear Pepe's debt. Pretty good way to start out a game. I gotta go steal some car. Sounds pretty fun, honestly. Let's go do some crime. On my way outside of the bar, I see a homeless guy, and ended up giving him $1. I'm such a nice guy, I know. My first view of the world outside the bar looks pretty good. I had to get into a car with some old gangster guy. They said they'd take me over to where I needed to do the job, but on the way, some dorks pull up, pointing guns at us and acting tough. Well, I decided I'm an absolute badass, and made him look like a punk. By the way, all the cyber stuff all over this dude's face makes him look absolutely crazy. I can definitely tell there's gonna be some interesting characters I'll come across in this game. Ensue badass jump off bridge. I arrived at the parking garage, and I'm assuming we are video chatting through our eyes, which is pretty cool. The security guard ends up turning the cameras off for me, and it's time to steal the car. The very, very, very ugly car, by the way. I hope all the cars don't look like this. And of course, my first mission's squandered by some jackass pointing a gun at me, which in turn ends up getting me and this jackass caught by the police. Then this Asian guy comes along and tells them to pretty much just kill us and dump us off because we aren't worth the paperwork. Really? I'm 20 minutes into the game and the cops are just going to kill me? Oh. Never mind. Turns out the jackass has a name, Jackie, and he's talking to me like I'm his best friend already, as if he didn't just point a gun at me. Wait. We literally became best friends. In what I can describe as a strange cutscene, 6 months pass, where Jackie and I just become super close. Half a year and 20 seconds. Okay. The cutscene ends and I'm in a car with Jackie now. Here I have my first problem. The game wants to give me a tutorial on how combat and other systems work in the game, and it chose the Matrix. Like, I'm Neo training in VR or whatever. A simulation. I would have preferred them to slowly teach me these things in real combat, not in VR, but you know, it's 2077 or whatever. Overall, the combat in the simulation did feel nice though. I think the combat will be a strong point of the game, just based off the mechanics and the movement. After finishing the tutorial, Jackie and I climb up to the apartment, where I get my first taste of real combat, and I end up saving a woman's life. By the way, crazy stuff happening there. They were extracting parts from people. I'm not exactly sure what parts, maybe they were cybernetic, but I found her naked in a tub, filled with ice with another dude, but he was dead, and I had to save her life. After finishing the mission, my street cred went up to 1. I don't know what that means. Like, I've beat the game and played over 30 hours of this, and I still don't have a clue what that system does. I guess police brutality is just different in this world. I made my way back home and I decided to change my clothes. Bad news, I have to see my dick every time I make a new outfit. There's also strangely a vending machine in my home that I have to pay for. Like, why is there a vending machine in my house? How do they restock it? Who owns it? Like, what kind of weird world has an apartment with a vending machine in it? And why don't I have a refrigerator or something? All food just comes out of vending machines in this world, I guess. I decide to go to sleep, and then I wake up to Act 1 appearing on the screen. So, that must have been the tutorial. V ends up telling Jackie he's got some kind of virus from the woman he saved because he had to jack into her. Jackie takes me over to the Ripper Doc, which is like this world's version of a doctor. I meet up with him and his name's Vic, and it seems like we both already have history. He ends up giving me some mods like in my hand and in my eyeball. I think the system's actually pretty cool. It's almost like this world's version of like, I want to say magic or something. You could end up putting a new arm on and it has superpowers. It's pretty cool. After getting the cybernetics put in, I have to meet up with a man named Dexter Deshawn. He's offering me and Jackie a supposed big job. He explains that there's a biochip I need to steal. It belongs to a company named Arasaka. Now first I have to go to some guys named the Maelstrom Boys and get a piece of tech called a flathead, and then I have to meet up with a woman who Dex said brought him the job. I got the option to meet up with some people who might be able to help me get the flathead. I assume that'll give me a different option to complete the quest, so I went ahead and talked to them, which in return gets guns pointed at me again. And now I have this feeling this is going to be a recurring thing. They offer to give me a chip with money on it to buy the flathead. Of course I take the offer, it's free money after all. Now let's go get the flathead. Rolling up, these guys are in some sort of super secure building. They have to turn off a bunch of different traps. And then I end up meeting them and they're like really creepy looking, almost like the guy who decided to point guns at me at the very beginning of the game. I get offered by some weirdo to smoke some random vape. Why not? V's a wild boy, you know? Then more guns proceed to get pointed at me, and the chip that this lady ended up giving me turned out to be a hacking tool, and they set me up. Of course they did. This leads to a big shootout with the Maelstrom creepos, which was actually a really fun part. I'm genuinely enjoying the combat in this game so far. I can't wait to try out all the different weapons, and based off all the different ones I'm looting, the looting process is really nice. Now, I'm not going to compare the weapon system to something like Borderlands, but this seems pretty good. Now, after making it almost all the way through the building, the whole bullet sponge thing came to a head. I had to fight this really big freak with a skull over his head, who I just had to cheese the hell out of in order to kill him. I was worried about this issue, but I didn't even address it till like 10 hours after this. But nonetheless, I ended up taking him down, and I took the robot dog with me. It's now time to meet up with that woman that gave Dex the job. I arrive at this strange club and meet her. Her name's Evelyn, and she tells me that this chip that I'm going to be stealing is up in this big fancy hotel owned by the Arasakas, and in order, we need to meet a brain editor or a brain dance editor to find out where they store the chip. Her name's Judy, and she ends up being the only like cute female character in the game, but it turns out she's a lesbian, so there's that. Now, brain editing's a cool idea, but all the missions that involve it, it's mostly just you're trying to find evidence, almost like a mystery, and it's not that fun, but it was definitely an interesting idea. After we finish that, Evelyn pulls me to the side and asks me if I want to screw over Dex and split the money, just make it 50-50 by cutting out the middleman. And I declined because I don't really want to screw the guy over. I mean, he offered me the job. I really have no reason, and I have a feeling it probably would have turned out bad. Well, here we go. We finally made it to the big job. I do have a feeling this job's going to go sour, though. It's just too good to be true. We meet at a club called the Afterlife and go over our plan, and Dex ordered us some fancy robot car called Delamain to take us to the hotel. We ended up making our way into the hotel just fine, and now we have to scout through the hotel with the flathead. The flathead is actually a really good idea. I like the hacking sequences and moving the flathead along in order to get through the hotel. It was a lot better than the brain editor thing. After scouting out sufficiently, me and Jackie headed up to the penthouse. Now it's time. We make our way through and we find the chip that we were looking for, but then kind of hits the fan, and we have to hide inside of a wall. I guess there's just for some reason empty rooms inside of walls here. Kind of convenient. While hiding, I'm introduced to two characters. A man named Yorinobu, then another man enters, Saburo, which seems like his father. They proceed to argue for a little while. The old guy's mentioned to be Emperor. I'm assuming he's the CEO of this big company. And now he's being choked to death by his son. Okay, so we just witnessed a murder. Now the whole hotel is going on lockdown, and we have to figure out how we're going to get out. Things get even worse, and we end up running outside and falling down the side of the hotel, where Jackie ends up getting wounded. Maybe he got shot, or he got hurt falling. I don't remember. The container that holds the chip has to be a certain temperature in order for it to keep the chip safe for some reason, so it has to stay cold, and it got damaged while we were falling. So Jackie comes up with an ingenious idea to go ahead and put it in his head, which doesn't sound like a smart move, but I guess we'll see. Now we gotta fight our way through the hotel, which was still a great time. The combat is like still shining. The enemies hit really hard. I have to take cover, and they also take cover, which makes it pretty engaging. Through all this, Jackie and I slowly make our way through the hotel until another red flag comes out, and I have to fight another bullet sponge. I'm forced to cheese and shoot 2,000 times, making me almost run out of ammo by the time I'm done with this mission. I probably should have turned the difficulty down at this point, noticing how hard it is for me to find ammo in this game, which is a complaint. I mean, we still got away, but not without issues. Jackie ends up dying right next to me in the car. Before he dies, though, he gives me the chip, and I store it in my head. Now, this part genuinely did seem like it was sad, but since you only do 2 missions with Jackie, and there's a silly cutscene where you pass through, 6 months and 20 seconds, it didn't really bother me. It kind of felt forced, but anyway. I make my way inside to go ahead and meet Dex, and Dex turned on me because the job went south and proceeds to shoot me in the head, which kills me. Dirty shot me in the head after my best friend just died. Like, this day can't get any worse. And then suddenly I wake up, I'm a different person, and Act 2 starts. Now, Act 1 felt like the real tutorial, and I'm left to wonder how the hell my character will survive after being backstabbed and shot in the head. Now that I've woken up and become someone else, like, I'm just Keanu Reeves now, I run around being some rockstar badass named Johnny Silverhand. No offense to the game makers, I'm gonna call him Keanu Reeves this entire video. Keanu gets mad about something and then I run over to Arasaka Tower and I just decide to blow shit up. But it turns out I'm actually not that big of a badass. I went from John Wick to Ted when some big cyborg dude absolutely smoked me. Now, this is the point in the game's story where things get a little wild and actually hard to keep track of at certain points. I wake up back to life somehow in a garbage dump and get a really gamer moment where I have to crawl for what feels like 10 minutes. It was the most annoying sequence. And then I saw Dex. Well, a very dead Dex. Thank God he's dead, but I do wish my character had the ability to have killed him instead of him just being shot by Takemura. Then Takemura, who was the bodyguard for Saburo, puts me in his car and tells me he's going to take me back to the Arasakas because I'm getting blamed for Saburo's death. This whole car scene in general is like one of the worst things I've ever played in my entire life. I had zero control of what my gun or damage. I would be shooting these enemies on the hood of this car or behind me, and the gun did zero damage. I was actually so annoyed. Like, how could these shots where I'm hitting these dudes straight on do zero damage? What the was this whole sequence? Honestly, this is the worst thing I've ever played in a video game. Maybe a game that I enjoyed. Still awful. Moving on from that, I wake up after like 6-7 cutscenes, and Vic tells me I have a dude in my head now. So Keanu is just like a part of me now.
Why do you come here?
And I don't have much time to live. He said I have about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because the chip that Jackie gave me to put in my head is taking over my brain. I guess when I died, the chip ended up bringing me back to life, and now Keanu is going to take over my body. So being alive again just kind of sucks, I have to admit. Now, moving on to Keanu Reeves' character, I think he's really interesting, and the idea of having another entity in your head taking over is pretty cool. But by the end of the game, I was really annoyed with all these scenes where my character loses control and coughs or argues with Keanu for 10 minutes. I never expected Keanu Reeves to yell at me and tell me to, become not alive. After waking up with Keanu in my head and a dead friend, I had to prepare the celebration of life or a funeral, whatever it is, at the bar for Jackie. His mother said I needed to leave him something, so I helped out. It really didn't do much for me. It was an interesting scene, but I helped Misty out, and I think she's a really good character. She was just such a different character in the game compared to everybody else, and she fit nicely. Also, Jackie's mom ended up giving me the keys to Jackie's old motorcycle, so that's pretty cool. Now, it's officially time to figure out how the hell I'm going to keep my body and not have Keanu Reeves take it over. I ended up getting a phone call from Takemura, and he told me to meet at the diner. He wants to get revenge on Yorinobu for killing the old guy, and V ends up mentioning that Evelyn might have some answers about the chip in his head because she was the one, after all, who wanted to steal it. I went ahead and I decided to follow V's instincts and go after Evelyn because I didn't really trust Takemura. Here, I got some leads, and I was going to a club to meet this guy called the Woodsman. I guess Evelyn was a prostitute or something. After fighting my way all the way through this giant club, I end up meeting him, but he didn't want to talk, so I just had to kill him, which gave me no answers. But after leaving the club, Keanu ends up telling me there's a thing called Soul Killer, and that thing took his mind and put it on the chip. And all of this leads to Mikoshi. I don't know what Mikoshi is, but I need to go there. He also still has this thing for Arasaka. He told me I need to take down Arasaka and that he wants to help me now. He doesn't want to take over my body. Yeah, I don't know if I believe that. Seems like he still just only wants revenge. After coming up empty on the search for Evelyn, I met up with Judy, the brain dance editor. We tracked down a doctor who helps dolls. I assume the dolls are prostitutes because that's what they're alluding to with Evelyn. And I just end up punching this weirdo. I mean, he's a pretty interesting character, but kind of an ass. During that, we end up getting some information that she's on some brain dance, and it turns out Evelyn's in some old ElectroCorp building, and I have to save her. Another long fight ensues, where I actually end up saving her, and then boom, right after that, I'm just smoking and talking to Keanu Reeves. I guess me and Keanu are becoming the same person, so that's pretty cool. Now here's where I was getting a little bored. The game became a bit hard to follow because I had so many different storylines that I could choose, and I was getting all these names thrown at me and no answers. I was getting like the Woodsman, Mikoshi, Hanako, Pan Am, Rogue, Alt Cunningham. Like, at this point in the game, I started to become really annoyed by certain aspects of the game. This didn't last forever, though. I ended up taking a break in the future. Takimura tells me that there's one way I could figure out the whole brain chip thing. It's by talking to Hanako. She's the Emperor's daughter. He wants to tell her that her brother Yorinobu was the one that killed him, and that he wasn't poisoned. Somehow or another, a different option popped up, probably from Keanu Reeves talking to me, saying I could track down a fella named Anders Holman. Here we're getting a bit convoluted with the 3 storylines. With 3 different options, I decided I'd follow Anders Holman because it sounded like the best option. He worked on Soul Killer. As it turns out, Johnny used to date some lady named Rogue, and she can tell me where Anders Holman is. She has some sort of ability in her eyes. But when I get there and talk to her, she won't give me the info for free, so I have to give her $15,000, or as the game would say, eddies. After being scammed out of $15,000, or you know, all my money, Rogue tells me Holman is with this group called Kang Tao and is being transported, and the best place to stop the transport would be to grab him outside the city because there's less response. Makes sense. So she ended up hooking me up with a woman called Pan Am to help me out, but I also have to help Pan Am out too. And now I have to drive 3.5 kilometers out of town to meet with her. But I must admit, when you're riding through the desert, it just feels like a nice region. You get the breakup from like the kind of boring looking night city. But I'll get on to the world design later on. All in all, the point is, the game world is just feeling really empty. When I roam around, there's almost nothing to interact with. It's not like a shop, and it's pretty disappointing. This being an open world game, you'd expect that they'd push you towards exploration. I made a deal with Pan Am to help her get her car and her stuff back, and she'll help me kidnap Anders Holman. Pan Am and I ended up setting up a trap in this abandoned town at this gas station so that we could jack her truck back from these weirdos. After stealing it, I did a dumb move and acted like a simp, which kind of hurt me. She asked me if I'd help her get revenge on the dude who originally stole the truck, and I was like, oh, sure, lady. Boy, was that a mistake. I died like 10 times during this mission because I suck on hard mode. It's really hard, who would have thought? And now get this. After killing 50 to 70 enemies for this woman, we head to the bar, and I try to hit on her because she's being nice, and she turns me down. Dick. I just killed so many people, and I still slept alone in this hotel room. What the f*** is this? It's never ending with my character. He just keeps having bad time after bad time after bad time. He's gonna die in 2 weeks, and after saving this woman's stuff and killing all these people for her, she still turns him down. I'm just absolutely flabbergasted at this point. The only romanceable female character is pretty annoying to me. Why does Judy have to be a lesbian when she's nice and relaxed? Meanwhile, Pan Am is like literally nuts. I mean, nuts in a cool way, but seems like too much work for me. Well, anyway, after V being down incredibly bad, it's time to snag Holman. Pan Am has this cool idea to set up a power station and turn it into a sort of EMP, which will in turn knock the transport Holman's on out of the sky. But after reaching the vehicle and killing the enemies, it turns out they already took Holman elsewhere. I go through 2 different places killing enemies till I actually found him, and after getting him back to the hotel, he pretty much tells me there's nothing he can do for me unless I go back to Kang Tao's research facility. I end up declining because I don't trust these people. I mean, I just killed a bunch of their operatives and stole a guy from them, so probably not gonna go back. He ends up giving me a blueprint for the Ingram chip, tells me they've probably changed it a lot, but maybe I could find a doctor who could help me get it out. Now it's time to try a different path. Hopefully this time I don't get screwed over without an answer. Pacifica's the location of the Voodoo Boys. I get a call from a weird guy called Mr. Hands, no clue what that's about, and they're the supposed answer. I had to do a job for a man named Placide to even get in contact with the leader Brigitte. He told me he could get me in contact with her if I clear out some mall that's full of all these big buff dudes and ladies. Okay, here we go. Now at this point in the game, the combat was the only thing that was holding me in, but I had one slight problem, and it was this mall. It was so freaking hard. I died probably 8 times trying to get through it, and after, there's a boss that was so hard to kill. I had to turn the difficulty down to normal at this point, because I just couldn't take all the bullet sponges anymore. If I wasn't going to get any answers from the characters in the game, I'm not going to spend 2 hours clearing a mall to get no answers. And that's coming from a person that usually really likes difficult games. I like a challenge. After the fight, I come to find out that Placide was pretty much purposely using me and screwing me over. This game's like a freaking fever dream. I'm kind of done at this point. Is the story like purposely meant to make people angry? And now the answer is I have to meet some lady in the deep web or something called Alt. Okay. I end up traveling into the deep web, trusting Brigitte and the people that just screwed me over, because that's all I have at this point. And she told me she could help me out because she's the creator of this. I'm not sure about the story. I don't know if it's Anders Holman or her. I think she created the Ingram and he created Soul Killer, or the other way around. Now I have to somehow make it into Mikoshi, which I guess is at the bottom of Arasaka Tower. I think I remember that correctly. But from this point on, I actually started to enjoy the game again. After a real lull period of being annoyed. I took a break for about a week and came back. I had a really good time from here on. The important bit that happens from here takes place with Takimura. He told me I need to break into an industrial park to upload a virus to help him get on the floats so that he can approach Hanako to tell her the truth about her father. So that's what I did. Well, after I dealt with my first game-breaking glitch where I couldn't pull any of my weapons out and I had to Google, I found out that I had to sleep with a Joy toy to get a cutscene that would let me use my weapons again. Did, strangely enough, work out. Very interesting. Now, sneaking into the industrial park was not super hard. I guess I was on normal difficulty now, but it took a few stealthy attempts, and after that I managed to upload the virus and get out of there, in a pretty cool scene where you climb out the roof and jump off. Now it's time to crash this parade and let Hanako know truth about her father. The parade mission was really fun. I actually really enjoyed sneaking around these buildings. The way they built it was almost like a platformer, where you're moving along these fire escapes that are broken in these pipes in order to assassinate these snipers, and I had a really fun time. It made me appreciate the missions for the story even more, but by the end, everything went wrong and Takimura ended up shooting Hanako, and had me meet him at an abandoned building down the street. I get there and he tells me that he only hit her with a trank, but the Arasaka people knew we were there. They completely demolished the building and I barely escaped with my life, and I'm pretty sure Takimura wasn't that lucky. Here's something weird happens and Keanu Reeves literally starts taking over my body for several hours at a time, and my condition is just absolutely disgusting. I'm falling over and coughing every 3 minutes, it feels like. Hanako lets me know that she wants to meet me at a club named Embers, and when I arrive at Embers, I get this message letting me know the game is pretty much over at this point. It says point of no return. I went ahead and went along with it, not knowing if it was for sure the ending of the game, and honestly, after this point, my character should have just been laid on his deathbed because every scene I'm coughing and falling on the ground non-stop. He must have terminal cancer. There's no reason this man should be walking around shooting people. She tells me she can help me if I expose her brother to a board group at Arasaka. I agree, assuming the people who run Soul Killer probably know how to turn back the effects of what's happening to me. I have to break into her house now and kill a ton of guards, where I still end up running into a few bullet sponges. It's always the mechs. After completing that and getting Hanako, me, her, and Anders Holman fly over to Arasaka Tower. Once we entered the tower, I could tell V's time was coming to an end, but I kept pushing through hoping that there could be a way I could save his life. We go to the secret room in his office and get a copy of the Emperor. His consciousness was uploaded onto this hologram thing, and we use that to our advantage at the board meeting. Everybody ends up believing us because of what the Emperor says, and Yorinobu decides to pull a crazy move and sends a kill squad and just starts shooting everybody at the board meeting. This guy really doesn't want to lose his power. If he killed to get it, I'm sure he'll kill to keep it. I fight my way up to the top of the tower and confront him, keeping my promise to Hanako that I wouldn't lay a hand on him. I'm assuming they work things out, and poor dying V gets in the elevator to get treatment with Anders, and while in the elevator, V just completely blacks out. After waking up from the blackout, I get 40 minutes of these strange cutscenes inside of this hospital room. During those cutscenes, I see on the TV that Saburo, the Emperor, actually takes over his son's body. I'm assuming that he was uploaded onto some chip and they put it in him and he took over Yorinobu's body. But then after I freak out, Anders comes in and gives me the bad news. He tells me that the Ingram chip has destroyed parts of my DNA, almost like radiation poisoning, so I have no more than 6 months to live. Holman gives me an offer though, saying that he can upload me into a chip and that I could keep living. But I don't really trust it. I don't trust Arasaka, even though they're trying to help me, and I don't want to end up like Johnny did. I thought about it for a few minutes, and I realized that V finally has a choice on whether he dies or lives. He doesn't end up putting in a chip and being shot to death unexpectedly. He's not just being killed by somebody. He actually gets a choice whether or not he lives or dies. And I gotta admit, if V gets to spend the rest of his days just relaxing, that's a really pretty ending to me. Anyway, I did it. I beat Cyberpunk 2077, and I'm not really too upset with the ending that I got. I wonder how I got this ending and what other endings there are. I'd like to play through the different endings and see what the game could have in store for V, but at the end of it, I enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077. There were some rough times that I had, and there sure are problems, but there are also high points for the game. I'm really happy that I only had one bug, and that was something I could easily fix. Anyway, let's talk about the good and the bad. We'll start with the bad news. Driving. Driving was terrible compared to what I thought it would be, and even though I decided to drive on mouse and keyboard for most of the game, I actually tried to use a controller, but the driving still sucked. You'd think with a game that they spent this much money on, they would have made the cars fun to drive. They just weren't. I ended up mostly fast traveling everywhere, and I think driving was one of the main reasons I didn't explore the world enough. I just didn't want to drive the cars. Things would pop up telling me I could buy a new car here and there, and I just was not interested. Another bad one. Keanu Reeves' cutscenes were interesting. He did a good job in this game with his voice acting, but I got so annoyed multiple times whenever he'd pop up and I'd have to deal with the inability to control myself, or laying on the ground coughing and arguing and fainting for hours. It was pretty annoying to finish a mission and prepare to go on a new one, and suddenly your knees buckle and you're having a conversation with Keanu for 15 minutes just arguing. I felt like they pushed it really hard to make you not want V to die, but it's not like V's Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. I didn't really care much about V because V was like a nameless protagonist. He was me. But not every protagonist is meant to be like Arthur Morgan, so I can't blame the game for that. Here's a big one for me. The world had about zero impact on me when I free roamed. I messed around free roaming for around 8 hours, and I still don't know what any of the streets look like or any direction to any place I was going. So very little stuck out to me. It's not like, oh, here's that one building. I could put it this way. In GTA 5, the stores and shops on the corners, the big buildings, certain mountains, they all stand out, and I know how to get around places without even looking at the minimap. I know where the airport is at and what roads to take. This game, I had no reason to know where a building was at. I felt like this game had a hard time choosing between RPG and story game, and I really wish they would have tried to go in one direction more. Overall, there were a lot of disappointments, but I'd rather move on to the good things about the game I liked. Combat, for the most part, I had a really good time with, especially early on. Later on, when I turned the difficulty down, I had a lot more fun. It felt really enjoyable to sneak around or to just go in guns blazing. I wouldn't mind trying new characters with different builds and actually trying to make interesting builds in this game, but I feel like the cutscenes, especially with Johnny, would hold me back from wanting to replay the game. Another good trait about this game, the characters in the game, at least some of them, were really great. I really enjoyed the fact that Vic and Misty were always these side characters trying to help V. It made him feel like he had a place in this world. Then there's Jackie, and although he was taken out so early on in the game, his personality was really fun. I think it made the game a lot more enjoyable and really helped me get into the game and want to play it from the very beginning. And you can't forget about old Johnny Silverhand, who's a pretty good character. He's like the devil on your shoulder, the invader in your brain. He's probably the most interesting character in the game, and he's a big reason why I kept playing, trying to learn more about him. He had good progression. Keanu was interesting to watch, but the cutscenes where V's dying, they could have really toned that down. Some of the side characters were really great too. I talked about the creepy pimp doctor guy. He was really weird, so he stuck out to me, and I got to punch him, so yeah, I'll probably remember him for a while. Now, after listing off a few things I liked and didn't like about the game, I'm going to talk about some of my biggest complaints with the game. My main one is the fact that the game didn't push different systems on me as much as I wish it would have. I saw crafting as a skill, and I never touched it once, assuming the game would teach me how to make attachments or upgrades to clothing, armor, or guns. Like, I had all these crafting materials in my inventory, and I even broke down certain guns to get more, but in the end, I never used any of it and never knew how to. I mean, sure, I can Google how to do that, but that feels a bit unfair for a casual player of a game. Now, being honest, I played this game very casually for two reasons. One, I felt like most people will probably play it the same way, but most of them won't even finish it. And two, the game isn't perfect, and actually made me not enjoy it several times during the playthrough, so I wasn't interested enough to actually Google those mechanics and care. I got through this period where I was just rushing to try to finish the story. After saying that though, I would play this game again, and maybe take it a bit slower and look around, try out the different mechanics. I really wish they would have pushed this game more towards an RPG, but as a story game, it works. Anyway, all in all, Cyberpunk 2077 has good traits and bad traits. I know there are a lot of people who really enjoy it, and there are people that don't like it at all. And honestly, after finishing it and thinking about it for a few days, I'd say I had a good time. Sure, there's some problems, quite a few honestly, but I found the game fun more often than not. I like the aesthetic and the characters. The world may have let me down, and the story was annoying sometimes, but at the end, I enjoyed the game for all the fever dream backstabbings that would happen, and all the times I fell down on my knees coughing. I'd say Cyberpunk 2077 is one step below a good game and one step above an okay game, but I never felt like I was truly being unfair to the game. After this rambling, I'd give the game like a 6. It would be a 7, but you can't bang Judy, so 6 it is. I think in the future I'll make a short video talking about my thoughts on the game after I play it again. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the new type of video, let me know down below. I'd really appreciate the feedback, and while you're down there, drop me a like and sub to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.